welcome to my June reading journal setup and fill out and my July setup. And the 47th time I've recorded this video voiceover. You'll see here that I have a kind of collage page because I like my calendar to start on a double page spread, because I use the double pages all the way across. I know some people put their calendar on one page and use the left hand side for other things, but I really like having it spread across 2 pages, mostly because I like to be able to write on my pages, and I feel like my letters can't go small enough if I'm not on a double page spread. Not that I write huge amounts on this, but that's just the way I feel. So I'm making my calendar, which is 5 dot grid spaces per square, and it'll be 7 across and 5 down. And I'll just let you watch me make this, and I'll be back in a second. So I've just erased my sketch lines there, and now I'm using my white Jelly Roll 0.8 to grab any mistakes that are going to make me nuts and just go over the top of those. Here I've pulled out an old Heidi Swap stamp that I'm just going to stamp all the way across. It is the name of the day with all the letters rather than just like S or just like SUN. It is the full text of the letter. And here comes my first mistake, because it wouldn't be my journal if I didn't make a mistake. And I have labeled it as July on all the calendar dates because my brain said, oh, we're in July, so let's do July. But it's not, it's June. So I'll go back and fix that later. Now I've taken a PET tape from, I believe, Journal Say. It could be Soto Studios, but I'm pretty sure it's Journal Say. And I'm using that to decorate around the edges. I like to have the majority of my calendar on the left, so 4 days on the left and 3 days on the right, so that I can do my book key on the right hand side, because that is where the book key goes. I don't make the rules, I just follow them. Book key goes on the right hand side. And now I'm putting down July because my brain is still convinced that we're creating July because we're in July when I'm creating this, but it is in fact for June. And I will go back and I will catch that mistake in a few minutes. These stickers are PET stickers from Soto Studios or Journal Say. I think Journal Say. I'm not exactly sure. My wife made an order and I made an order around the same time from those 2 places, and so now they're kind of jumbled in my brain. So here is where I continue on with filling out sort of the blank spaces that are left with my PET decorative stickers. And in just a moment, I'm going to realize, oh, it is indeed not July, it is June. So I will pull all of those up. Well, not all of them, but the 2 letters that I NE and put down LY. And I've sort of double stacked them because the letters are very small and I'd like them to take up more room. So it's kind of like a drop down, I suppose. And here is where I caught my mistake that indeed we're not in July, Katie, we're in June. So I'm renumbering everything. And I used my Bic whiteout tape just to go over the wrong numbers. And I'm numbering on the opposite side. that I numbered on previously, because sometimes the whiteout can tear if I haven't left it to dry long enough or set up long enough. Filling in those days that I'm not going to be using with more colored PET. And now I've picked out several highlighters that I'll use to keep track of the books that I read and the days on which I read them. So I use one highlighter per book, and I will use the highlighters again because I don't want to have a trillion highlighters. I do want to have a trillion highlighters, like in my possession, but I don't want to have a trillion in my journal to keep track of. And I will just choose one for the book, and then I will put in a little square and I'll label them A through however many letters I get to, J, H, I don't know. And then I will use that highlighter to highlight the days that I read. And I will put a little letter on the first day that corresponds with that book. And then when I finish that book, I'll put a little asterisk to note that I have finished reading that book. I was pretty prolific this month, but it was mostly all of the same series, which is Cradle by Will White. And I read mostly the books in the Cradle series, except for one foray into Dungeon Crawler Carl, which was an audiobook, which I am now using my stamp to delineate that as I read this as an audiobook versus an ebook or physical book. I'm just putting the book covers down that I printed on label paper, ran it through my laser printer, made them in Word, screen capped them. If you really want a how-to on that, I can do that. It's not that complicated, and a lot of other people have done it, and I'm sure better than I could do it. But I try to alternate the pages and the spots that I put it on, because it'll get really thick in those four corners and the centers if I don't, and even if I do. So I don't want anything to be of uneven thickness. I want it all to be the same thickness. And now I'm going through and I'm putting down the information that I track for every book on every page, which is the number of pages, the genre of the book, the format I read it in, and the rating that I give the book out of 5 stars. I also write quotes because I don't do how I felt about the book or what I liked about the book, because for me that's kind of transient, especially if I read the book again, which I often do not do. But I mean, I suppose it would be a good endeavor if I did reread books, but I don't. So I don't need to go back and see how I feel or felt about a book in the past, which is what the only reason I can see keeping track of how I felt while reading a book. So I put in my favorite quotes, or quotes that really stood out to me or stood out to somebody on Goodreads, because I pull them from Goodreads, but often people seem to resonate with the same quotes that I resonated with. There's only been a couple of times where I knew I had a quote that I really, really liked and didn't show up on Goodreads, but it's rare. So now I'm picking out the markers or the pens that I'm going to use for each book. I try to make them cohesive with something on the book cover. So for this one, which is by Will White, which is the 3rd in the Cradle series, Sky Sworn, there's red. So I'm writing the quotes in red. I also fill out any information at the top, the pages, genre, format, rating, in that same pen that I've chosen for the quotes. And you saw me put in my nifty little stamp that I don't remember where I got it from, because I've had it for ages and ages. That is my rating stamp. So Sky Sworn got 3.5 out of 5 for me, because it was okay, but it wasn't as compelling as some of the books that came before, like books 1 and 2. The second book is Ghostwater by Will White again, because Cradle series has me in a chokehold in June, and I've chosen blue because that's what goes with the quotes, and I really liked this one much better than the previous book, so it got a 4. It's hard to get above a 4 for me. You have to be a really excellent book. It does happen sometimes. Not really excellent, but you know, working your way to greatness, which is 5. 5 is a greatness. And then I put a little picture of Dross, who is one of the characters that we meet in that book. Now we're on to Dungeon Crawler Carl. And in all honesty, I gave it a 3.75, but it should be a 4. Just because of the narrator. Jeff Hayes is amazing. He's awesome. If you want to get sucked into a book series like nobody's business, listen to the Dungeon Crawler Carl audio books. The books are great on their own, but the narration makes these books. It's amazing. So I gave it a 3.75. It's a 4. It's a 4. I don't know why I gave it a 3.75. It's a 4. Now we're back to Cradle, and Underlord is the next book. And again, it's a progression series, so there is some plot, there is some emotional character development, but it's mostly how powerful can this person get. And this one really was a kind of grind book for him to get more Lyndon, who's the main character, to get more powerful. And I'm adding in a picture that I just printed on plain printer paper, cut it out, put some glue on the back of one of the characters that gets introduced in that book. So that was a 3.75 out of 5 for me. The next book is still in the Cradle series that is called Uncrowned, and I liked it a lot because a lot happens that isn't, progression happens, but it's not solely focused on grinding. There's a reason for the progression. And I've put the two main images of the two main characters, Lyndon and Yaren. And there's a backpack with Little Blue on it, who is also a character. And so that one got a 4.25 out of 5 for me. I'm now on Winter Steel, which is pretty much a continuation, like a part 2 of Uncrowned. And so it got a 4.2 out of 5 because it's a continuation of that same sort of plot line that was happening. And I really enjoyed it. Put down a picture of another character who got introduced a while ago, but is very important throughout the series. And he fights with a broom, which I find very amusing. So it got a 4.2 out of 5 for me. And I've moved on to Bloodline, still in the Cradle series. The plot line has changed a bit. The things that were happening in the last book are now over, and they're moving on to something else. And again, I'm not as invested in this book as I was in the other two, so it got a 3.75 out of 5. And I'm putting in another character called Mercy, who has been introduced before, but is very important in this book. And the next book, the last book that I read for June, is called Reaper, also in the Cradle series. And I had some issues with the first pen that I picked out for this book, so I had to switch it. We're now using an Archer and Olive pen, and this book was more interesting because a character that's introduced in the first book and is sort of relatively important comes back into play in a big way, and there's a big reveal, which you kind of sense coming, but happens in this book. So it got a 4 out of 5. And now I'm just taking some stickers that I made. Again, just printed it on sticker paper through my printer, and I've cut them out by hand because although I have a silhouette, I don't use it. It's not set up. I don't know if it works with my Mac. It's kind of old. Anyway, I'm just cutting them all out by hand. And I'm putting them on the various books that I feel they go with. And I flipped back some to the previous 2 books in the series that were not read in June to put them down as well. So now I've moved on, and I've unfortunately skipped my recap page, so I'm going to have to go back and put that in as a tip in later, which will not be shown in this video, but I need to have it there for myself and my peace of mind. So in my next video, I'll show that. Again, 4 squares on the left, 3 squares, days. 4 days on the left, 3 days on the right, because that's the way it works. And I'll decorate all around the top and the sides and the bottom. And the right-hand side will be the book key. I'm using a stamp set that I cannot recall where I got it from. It could be Hebe. It might not be. I honestly don't recall. And I don't label my stuff. So there you go. You'll see me stamping. Once I've finished stamping the letters, I'll stamp it off on a kind of scratch piece of paper to get all the ink off. It's not the best way to take care of your stamps, but it is what I do for my planner stamps. It's not what I do for my card making stamps. I take real good care of those. But my planner stamps, I just stamp them off until nothing comes off. And now I'm finally dating the correct month of July. This is where July goes. So I'm putting the dates in for July, and then I will decorate after I fix my boo-boos or things that I decide I can't live with. There's very few things I decide I can't live with, but sometimes if the lines aren't crisp enough, I'll want to go back in with that jelly roll and fix that. Now I'm pulling out, this I know is from Soto Studios. It is the Blossom Life packet, and it's what I'm going to use to decorate the July spread. I'm also going to grab some book spines from Soto Studios that are called Reading Spine, and I'm going to grab a packet of letters, sticky letters from Recollections that I got from Michael's like a billion years ago, and use that as my June title. So I'll just let you watch me decorate, and I'll be back with you in a few minutes. So now that I've finished doing my decorative part, I'm just going to put in the logistical part. So I'm going to add book key just on top of the mild liner. Love mild liners. Love, love, love them. And I'm going to flip back to the front, and I'm going to start filling out my tracking pages that I fill out every month. I haven't done anything on any of my challenges this month, so no progress there, but This is my number of pages read chart, so I can see, how I'm doing. Of course, that 8,500 is quite the aspirational number, way up there at the top. And then I flipped to my genres read page, which I will add quite a few to fantasy and just one to lit RPG. Technically, I suppose that Cradle series probably could go under lit RPG. It's not really role playing, but it is progression, which is a very different thing from fantasy. But I put it under fantasy. And the number of books read, so I read 8 books in June, so I'm just filling that out on my bar graph. Flipping to my series tracker, which I'll update what I've read for Cradle, which was quite a few books, and then one for my Dungeon Crawler reread that I'm doing on audio. Flipping now to my favorite books of the year spread and adding Dungeon Crawler, Uncrowned to my June favorite book. And then that went up against the Dungeon Crawler Carl first book, audio. And of course, Dungeon Crawler Carl won that competition. Flipped now to my totals page. So I read 8 books in June, 3,256 pages, 7 e-reader books, 1 audiobook, and my average rating was 3.91. And now I'm back at my spread that is every book that I've read over the course of the year. And I've realized I've spelt both Will White and Matt Dinneman incorrectly. And so I have fixed that with my super handy dandy Bic whiteout. And then I'm coloring in all of the stars for each book according to what I rated them. And I do this in a colorful way, not rainbow, just different colors. I try not to repeat colors too close together. I could do it all black. Maybe I'll do that next year, but this is what I'm doing this year. And I've turned to a new page, which is always exciting. And that's all she wrote for my reading journal this month. And maybe next month I'll be able to do this without having some mistake. Unlikely, but one can always dream that there will be no mistakes in one's journal.
Maybe next month.
There you go.
Thanks for joining me for my June, July reading journal setup, and I hope to see you again.